You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 16, Preludes.
Welcome back into another episode of Mission Log Prodigy, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm Norman Lau.
And I am Charlene Schmidt. Just like our flagship Mission Log podcast, each week here on Mission Log Prodigy, we discuss each and every episode of the animated series, discover what makes them special, and see if there's any morals, messages, meanings, and what have we learned.
And this week, it is episode 16, Preludes. Now, please remember that Mission Log Prodigy is an in-depth review podcast, so if you have not seen Preludes, here's your prelude to pause. See what I did there? And then here's your prelude to unpause, and then come back to hear us talk about Preludes.
The prelude to the prelude of the prelude.
That's exactly right. For all of you who are keeping score, that's a lot of preludes.
Lots of preludes going on here.
So
sorry.
That's all right. That's a prelude. The pause is a prelude to the next session.
Just got to take that deep breath. You know, that's what a prelude kind of is.
That's right.
Yes. Let's get back to the show.
All right.
Mission Log Prodigy is produced for YouTube and as a regular podcast. So if you're watching us, please make sure you engage that like button, the share button, the subscribe button. Make sure you're on Roddenberry Entertainment's YouTube channel and subscribing to all the things. Or if you're listening to us, make sure you've got all the podcasts.roddenberry.com podcasts. You can get them any which way you please. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Switch, Stitcher, whatever you want to do. It's there. It's available. Also, don't forget, you can follow Mission Log Prodigy on Twitter at ML_Prodigy, and you can keep up with all the latest news and updates there.
I like that you just invented a new podcast system. I think you called it Switcher. That was amazing.
Did I call it Switcher? See, that's going to be some sort of Stitcher and Spotify combo someday. Maybe the companies will merge, and so then we're going to have Switcher.
Spitcher. I'm going to TM and trademark that right now.
Do it. You'll be a rich man.
Now, before we get into the recap, here's why our podcast is so unique. We want to hear from you, our younger Prodigy fans out there, because there's a lot that's happening, and we want to hear all of your thoughts about it. So please send us a 1 to 2 minute voice message at missionlog-prodigy@roddenberry.com. The dash is that little hyphen between the two words, mission log and prodigy, not the word dash. So it's missionlog-prodigy@roddenberry.com. And in your voicemail message, please answer these questions. What is your first name and age? Did you like the episode? What was your favorite part? And what did you learn?
Yeah, we look forward to hearing your comments. We always do. And like always, they're going to be featured at the end of our show. So to start things off, we get to answer the questions ourselves. So how about it, Norm? Did you like this episode? Okay,
so I think this is the episode that a lot of us have been waiting for. I like origin stories, quote unquote, origin story episodes. And I don't like origin story episodes at the beginning. I like them towards the end where, you have this moment where everyone's just kind of reflecting on, okay, what do we talk about now? Towards right before the end. What do our fans need to know about us now? Right. And
yes,
Preludes like the calm before the storm. I'm going to get into Preludes and the definition of it later on in the show, but this is that big, deep breath that we all, I think, need to take.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
How about you?
Oh, yeah. Character-driven episodes. I'm kind of a sucker for those anyway. So if you're going to just do a whole round robin of everybody's backstory, we're going to share stories. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the episode. Yeah, I simply adored it. And this episode could not have been better named or better placed. I totally agree with you on that, where we're going to learn just enough to really feel satisfied and complete with what we know, so that when we go forward into these last episodes and everything is just in crazy mode, mm-hmm. it's going to be good. This is that calm before the storm.
Yeah, absolutely right. What was your favorite part?
Favorite part? Well, okay, if this is corny, too bad. I don't care.
We do corny
I loved
here.
It.
Yeah,
corny. I have no shame about corny. When everybody hugged at the end of sharing their stories, that was just adorable. I loved it. That was my favorite part.
This is our crew. This is our crew coming together, right? This is what they do. Yeah.
Yeah, it felt good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know this is a weird thing, but with all this great slick animation, and we've been talking about like how the animation's been getting like better and better and better over the course of like the last few episodes, certainly over the course of the entire season.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing that I loved the most were those still image story frames of the Federation's first contact with Solum. And then when the Protostar reappeared later, those kind of like those illustrated, like really intense, but really beautifully illustrated frames.
Right. Almost like they took the storyboard, but then added more detail.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool.
I thought those were gorgeous. Yeah. And I hope, because I want all the merchandise, I hope that stuff like that is released somehow, somewhere in some legal to purchase form.
Right. Could we get all the Prodigy merch, please? We are so hungry for it. We're ready.
Yeah. It'll be really interesting to see, like, after like all the analysis are done and then after the numbers are crunched, if kind of like the Hagemans can go to vendors and say, okay, you guys might want to get on board with this now.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Shut up and take our money.
Yeah. All right.
We are ready to give it to you.
What did you learn, Shar?
What did I learn? Okay, there's two big lessons here that I learned, and they're kind of intertwined with one another. So the first one is that everybody's gone through something, right? We've all got things in our past that inform who we are and how we think of the world. And, everybody has painful experiences. Sometimes it's good to just kind of be kind about that, to be cognizant of that.
Yeah.
You remember where your sensitive spots are, somebody else is going to have them in their places. And yeah, it's just good to go in with a good attitude, an open mind, and gently. So then the second thing is, it's good to talk about these parts of ourselves that we might not like to talk about. But when you do, it can be really good if you do that with people you trust.
Yeah.
It creates bonds of understanding. And you know what? It also helps you feel less alone with that if you share it with somebody. And that can be really good for you.
I can see the Rock Talk part of the story has made an impact on you.
Oh, you don't even know.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to get to that a little bit later.
I have so many thoughts about Rock Talk. Okay.
Yeah.
But before we do that, you got to recap.
Yeah. So before we get to that, so here's the thing that I learned about the episode. So here's
sorry. Forgot.
Oh, that's okay. Now here's an old saying. So here is and people have heard this in a variety of different ways. Those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. We know that part, of kind of like the lexicon of, human phrases. You can change who you are, even if you can't change your own past. Your past doesn't define you. It just kind of informs you. And in an interesting way, I'm not even really talking about the kids so much at Prodigy. I'm talking about, say, let's take a look at the Kazon. So
yeah,
the Kazon were slaves that rebelled and ended up becoming slavers. So they didn't really change their past. They learned from it, and they learned in a way that was unable to break the cycle of their own history.
Unfortunately, right? I think in that kind of a situation, you do exactly what you were taught. Right. Or you do the opposite of it, and they chose the bad choice.
Yeah.
I really don't like them being these traffickers of the unwanted.
And in
Not a good look for them.
And in that show of hands, that translates into make sure that you send all of your comments to missionlog-prodigy@roddenberry.com to let us know what you think about the Kazon, and if we're on the mark, or if you have your own opinions about that. So you're right, Char. Let's jump into the recap now for Star Trek Prodigy, Episode 16, Preludes, written by, take a deep breath, Julie Benson, Shauna Benson, Kevin and Dan Hageman, Nikhil S. Jayaram, Deandra Pendleton Thompson, Chad Quant, Lisa Schultz, and Aaron Waltke, also known as The Writer's Room.
Woo!
Yeah, or most of The Writer's Room. And directed by Steve In Chang An and Sun Shin.
Wow. When the writer's list is that long, it basically is The Writer's Room, we're in for a biggie.
All right, so pay attention, everyone, because there's a lot going on. Deep breath. As the Dauntless patrols the neutral zone, Vice Admiral Janeway patiently waits for any signs of the Protostar's escape as she listens to Chopin's Prelude No. 4, which always helped her pass the time. Commander Tyses arrives with an update on their thieves in the form of a galactic bounty with detailed information on these unwanted, including their full identities. Even so, Janeway wonders why they won't respond to her hails. On the Protostar, the team is hit hard at work trying to find the auxiliary warp drives so that they can escape the neutral zone and evade the Dauntless. Dal is wallowing in self-pity after endangering his crew on Noble Isle. However, Jankum points out that Dal's not the only one with a sob story, and Zero agrees, adding that everyone has parts of their past they wish they could forget. Rock Talk explains how she ended up on Tars Lamora. She was part of a sideshow act that only paid in Nutrigoo and applause. And after refusing to be the misunderstood, brutish, and hulking monster who was always thwarted by the valiant hero, Rock was sold to Kazon slavers and was taken to Tars Lamora. However, she believes that it was her painful past that led to her newfound family. Zero's story was similar in that they were captured by Kazon slavers, but it was Zero's colony of free-spirited Medusans who were chased and hunted from their newfound home, accidentally leaving Zero behind. On the Dauntless, Essentia and Dreadnought continue repairing the Diviner's damaged memories. Essentia explains that she and the Diviner were once the same age on Solum when the Federation first appeared. That event escalated into the solemn civil war in which the Federation remained neutral. Decades later, as Solum was on the edge of ruin, another Federation vessel appeared. It was the Protostar, under the command of Captain Chakotay, who declared his ship was heavily damaged, passing through a temporal anomaly. Completely bent on revenge, the Valnukat captured Chakotay and his crew and armed the Protostar with a secret weapon programmed to destroy Starfleet before their original first contact with Solum. As they prepared to return through the wormhole, Chakotay and his crew escaped, and he sent the Protostar into the wormhole alone. Desperate to retrieve their superweapon, the last surviving Valnukat forged themselves into the Order, with the means of sending their remaining ships into the past, with only one member of the Order and one dreadnought per ship. Only a few survived and were scattered across time and space. The Diviner's fate was 20 years ago on Tars Lamora, where he ensured his mission would continue through creating Gwyn, his progeny. But Essentia arrived only 3 years ago as she aligned herself with Vice Admiral Janeway, who was the one person who had the will and the personal stake to find the Protostar. Speaking of, it's Jankum Pog's turn to tell his tale of woe. Jankum was accidentally woken up earlier than expected on a deep sleeper ship filled with 29 other Tellarites. Jankum had to fix everything by himself. Unfortunately, Jankum was using up too much oxygen from the ship, so Jankum decided to leave his people so their sleeper ship would reach its destination. Eventually, Jankum, like the others, was captured by Kazon slavers. Hologram Janeway appeared to let everyone know that they were ready to restart the warp drive, and after Rock brought it online, Dal asked Hologram Janeway what the real Janeway was like. She sat them down for a story about Molly. On the Dauntless, Vice Admiral Janeway discovers that someone named the Diviner contracted this galactic bounty for a handful of unfortunate kids, one of which looks like their mysterious guest. Commander Tyce says that he's in Essentia's quarters, and when Janeway arrives there, she is startled by Essentia in her Valnukat form with Dreadnought at her side. And before she can act, Janeway is knocked out from behind by the Diviner, who plans on using Janeway as insurance to succeed in his mission.
No. You do not knock Janeway unconscious and roll the credits. No, you do not. They rolled the credits.
Yes, they did. And everyone probably felt the exact same way you did, because you do not do that to Janeway.
Oh, no, you do not. Mm-mm.
That's intense. A lot of intense stuff happening in this episode.
Oh, yeah. My goodness. So much stuff. So much character building moment, exposition, storytelling. Good golly, where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with our observations, as we always do. These are like the things that are like either fun or poignant or fun poignant or everything in between. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in this episode.
Well, if we're having fun notes, I don't know if I took many fun observations. I mean, because some of these backstories are a little sad. I took sad notes, not happy notes.
Well, let's see if we can turn this Nutrigoo frown upside down.
Okay. We can try.
All right. So
how about we start with that?
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Okay. So the fact that Rock's association of Nutrigoop with reward and happiness breaks my heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not only is it just the food that she knows, and it was heartbreaking enough that we learned that way back when, but now we know that she finds it comforting because of how she associates it with those good feelings of being rewarded for good behavior when she was essentially a circus sideshow attraction, which again breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Like nobody, no creature, nobody should be treated that way. That's terrible. And I just wonder, how is Rock such a beautiful soul and so optimistic after all she's gone through?
I'm wondering if her species is just like that. They're always just misunderstood. And, it does break the heart, when Rock's association with Nutrigroup has like all these different like negative associations, like remember when they were first starting to learn the Protostar, then Janeway said the replicators can, create everything you want, and Janka makes just a ton of like food that he loves. And then
yes.
And then Rock Talk just makes Nutrigoop because it's the only food she knows. And we thought back then was just like, okay, that was the food that was served on Tars Lamora, which it was. But now we realize that it has a completely different layer, which makes the heartbreak even more devastating.
Yeah,
right?
They doubled down on it.
Yeah.
Darn you writers, you know how to get to us.
Thanks a lot, writers team, for breaking our hearts. Again.
Thanks for doing your job really good.
I know, right? Speaking of doing a great job, so Commander Tyses is probably like, he's growing to be like one of my favorite characters right now.
Yeah.
But I have a spider sense tingling about Tyses.
Ooh. Okay, tell. What do you think is going on? In
that same way I had that spider sense about Essentia. So I don't know why, but Andorians never always felt to me that they were the biding their time, patient, analytical personalities in the past. We've seen Andorians on, in historically across the Federation and other shows, say like Enterprise with Shran, the original series with Journey to Babel, and then now. So you have this one Andorian who is calculating like a Vulcan, and it just doesn't ring quite true to me.
Now that you mention that, he does seem very Vulcan-esque. Does he have a little button on the back of his neck too? Is he going to transform, you think?
I am looking at everything, and if there's one thing that I've learned, and I've said this before, I'm a broken record on repeat, I believe that there are always something hiding in plain sight when it comes to these shows. I always do.
That's what we've been taught so far. So that kind of checks. Yeah. So, and if your spidey sense is tingling, I'm inclined to agree with you because you were absolutely right about Essentia.
I had a hunch it paid off. I'm no Columbo, but it did feel like it was the right thing to watch at the time.
Okay, well, that's a really cool observation. That didn't hit me the way it hit you, so that's very cool. Thank you.
What do you think about the seeing the Blue Cation orphan again? Or different orphan? I shouldn't say orphan again, but saying like.
Yeah, another Cation.
Yeah.
Oh, that whole scene. The way Rock Talk just wants to be friendly and laugh and have a good time and gets rejected because she's the big scary monster. Mm-hmm. Again, breaking my heart. I don't know how many times I'm going to say that in this episode, but we're on a roll here.
Yeah. So what else you got there, Shar?
Well, okay, maybe we ought to move away from Rock Talk. And maybe go, because I mean, we could probably do the whole episode just on that, but
easily.
Let's keep it moving.
Yeah. Okay. Let's keep it
How about with Zero? Another heartbreaking story, basically being hunted down. And I guess what was interesting is it starts off so peaceful and you really do get that sense of freedom visually with the music. They don't have to speak a word. As Zero says, we just were. Totally got that from everything. Really well done, everybody. And then it really drives home what Zero has lost since that moment.
Yeah. There's a lot of kind of like this overwhelming sense of like loss of innocence, loss of freedom. And you know what? I get that more like the more I watch it, because that's what we do on Mission Log. We kind of like rewatch episodes over and over and over again to see like more and more and more of the morals, meanings, and messages. But I have to admit, I was really looking more at the details, like, the first time around, because, there are the Kazon slavers, they were wearing the same goggles that Spock was wearing in their No Truth Beauty. And
nice
because
catch.
That's those are the goggles that prevent any mortal from going mad at the sight of Medusa.
Right.
And also the ship that the Medusans escaped on that planet. It's the same ship that was done in the remastered version of that episode, for the original series. So that was, I mean, these guys, like I know that we talk about the writers and we talk about, all that talent, but they're the talents of, the directors. They're the talents of, the people that are doing like all of the effects work and just those small details that we all are paying attention to, and they are always getting right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They know their stuff. That's what makes it over the top good.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of another old reference, so on the Protostar, it looked like Chakotay had a crew of one, and that one was an Aurelian first officer.
Yeah, right? Another homage to the animated series. How about that?
I know.
That's pretty cool.
It was so cool. I mean, if we get like an Eric's reference, I think I'm just going to lose my mind.
Hey, anything could happen. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a kind of funny note I put in because it's about toilet humor, or rather plunger technology, which apparently hasn't needed to advance in hundreds of years. When it works,
right?
I guess.
I'm surprised that like Jankum wasn't doing like, percussive technology, or percussive engineering, like on the toilet.
I loved it when he said that out loud after he kind of knocked the first machine into gear.
Did you notice that when the kind of like the robot butler kept asking him his name, which kind of forced him from I to Jankum Pog?
Do you suppose that's why he always says Jankum Pog?
I think so. It's like, we don't know how long he was on that sleeper ship, and we don't know how long that robot butler was kind of badgering him about who he was, what his name was. So it could have been years. I mean, I don't really know. I was looking for a timestamp on that, couldn't find one. It's almost like that same way that, like, we don't know how long, like, Rock Talk was, like, lost in time.
True.
Right?
It was enough time for him to consume enough oxygen to where the ship would run out.
That's a great point.
He just went back to sleep.
Yep.
So it must have been a while to fix all of those problems.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of problems.
Yeah. And also a while for him to basically get programmed into referring to himself in the third person.
Yeah, it started a habit. Okay, also that automated assistant. Oh my gosh. Did you have tech support nightmares?
I loved.
Oh my gosh. Because that's what was going through my mind. It's like pulling your teeth out would be more productive than going through this, because the whole thing would go a lot quicker if you could just get to a real person. Darn it. You know the issue and a real person could figure it out. But no, you've got to go through all the prompts and they're going to give you all the bad suggestions that you have to jump through the hoops first. And oh God, if you've been there, you know.
That was kind of like, I guess that was Jankum Pog's version of Badgie.
Only it was the ship that was trying to destroy him in a way, with all of its problems and things breaking and stuff and fire.
Exactly. We have time for about one more observation. And for me, always love hearing like a deep cut reference from Voyager. And this time it was Molly. I loved hearing Molly.
The Irish setter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
Nice little callback.
That just took me back all the way to Caretaker. And I think that was the point, right?
Heck yes. Yes, indeed. It worked. That was good.
So what about you, Sherry? You have one more observation for us?
Well, how about a big question that we're not going to get the answer to in this episode?
Yeah.
Where's Chakotay?
Good question.
I want to know where he is. I am dying here.
Well, I'm
For as many questions as this episode answers, that's not one of them. We've got to wait. We're not going to find out probably till the very end. I know that, but oh my goodness.
Yeah. Seeing Chakotay again and doing what he did and kind of like smiling and saying like, you know what? If anyone's going to figure this out, Janeway's going to figure this out.
Of course.
Right?
Of course. And also his little kind of,
mm-hmm.
As you notice that too? Oh man.
That was a great
this show.
moment. Yeah.
Every moment, just, oh man, there's something to savor.
We have some big discussion points that I'd like to get to. And Char, I'd love to start with you because I know that Rock's an important character to a lot of people, and she's definitely an important character to us. So you've already kind of like tipped your hand at how much her backstory meant to you. So why don't we start with you first?
Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody has a heartbreaking story, but with Rock being so young and going through so much, I think that just really hits it that much harder when she shares her story and what that means. Because there's a couple of really cool things in this whole situation, right? Is she has this thing in her past. She doesn't really want to talk about it because it's painful. And it's not something that she chose to do. It was something that happened to her. And her response to it has been amazing. She is such a happy, joyous person who just wants to make people happy and laugh. And she's so nurturing, like with Murph. I just, can you tell that I love her? Yeah. So another big point was, it helps to talk about it. That's what Rock says after the fact. And she would not have done that if Gwen had not reassured her that she was among friends who were only going to love her for sharing it. And that's really important because you're not just going to share the deepest, darkest parts of your past with anybody, right? Because you got to get vulnerable, and that's kind of scary. But when you do that with people that you trust, that's where the cool stuff happens. I love that.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, it helps you feel better.
It's a great point that in the show, like, especially when it comes to like Star Trek series of the past, we rarely get a chance to actually see the crew kind of connect with one another, from a plot point. We see it from a plot point. We see it from, okay, the crew has to be, really good at their jobs in order to solve the problem. You're going to go to one character for, an analysis. You're going to go to another character for, some type of tactical observation. You can go to another character, for let's try and communicate with this, whatever it is. But rarely do you ever see downtime between, characters. And even during Shore Leave ends up being more of like a procedural for how do we solve the problem, as opposed to let's sit around and talk about our feelings, which I think is super important.
Or it's like vacation goes wrong and here's how.
Right. And so it's kind of like, okay, like it's like on Ryza, we're on Ryza for vacation, but all of a sudden something happens when we got to figure it out because we have the skill sets exactly needed to figure this out. But
how convenient.
This was more like the Breakfast Club version of Star Trek, where you have all of these kids who are like, well, you know what? We got nothing better to do. We still have to wait. It's not like we can push the engines forward. So we have X amount of time to do X amount of this. And you know what? It's time for us to kind of like really get to know each other before we, like a prelude, like the title, before we really have to push forward with a lot of things. So
you just described what this episode actually did for the story.
Yeah. I mean, I know that we said it was like there's a big kind of pause and you kind of like hold your breath, but in that holding of the breath, all of these storylines are taking place. Like we get a lot of Dal and we get a lot of Gwen, but we never really got a lot. And I know that I've said this before in the podcast where we wanted to see kind of like the Jankum centric episode. And this is about, I think, the closest that we've gotten so far because we've really learned a lot about Jankum Pog.
Absolutely. This was that moment. We've been waiting for it. And I think the fact that we did have to wait so long for it kind of makes it more satisfying.
Yeah.
Because if we learned of this earlier, what good would it have done us back then? We didn't need to know it necessarily. We knew what very little we needed to know, that he came from a sleeper ship, but we didn't know when or why he was out there or any of that. Now we do, which is really cool because it's not so much about where he came from. It was when. It was pre-Federation days. That's pretty cool. That explains why they're out in the Delta Quadrant, because it took that long to get there. My question, though, is what is this sleeper ship's destination? Where were they planning on going?
Well, I think that's a really interesting thing about the choice to go out there in space and just trust the fact that your ship's going to get there. Because when we saw the sleeper ship, it was, it was going wherever it was going. And then all of a sudden an asteroid activated Jankum Pog, and Jankum Pog, he woke up when he wasn't supposed to. So all of these situations happened where, it proves that not everything's going to go to plan, on a sleeper ship. We've seen sleeper ship in colony ships before. We saw one on Enterprise. That's where Travis Mayweather's history comes from, being a boomer, going on colony ships and deep sleeper ships and things like that. But that does explain why you're going to probably see like a bunch of different races out there in the Delta Quadrant that aren't supposed to be there. It's not that they're not supposed to, it's just that we never saw them there before.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
if you see them, they're like in the fighting pit. We've seen Klingons, in the
Yes.
fighting pit, wherever that was. And that has to be in the Delta Quadrant, because the only other Klingons that made sense would be what we saw on the kind of like the space station where we found Okona, with the Klingon there that was like giving Gwen a hard time. So, but that was closer into beta space as opposed to Delta Quadrant
Right.
space. Right.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to talk about though, is Zero. Zero starts off this entire conversation. So Zero says, we each have things in our past we wish to forget, some more than others. And then, Rock was like, hey, what are you doing? Like kind of like poking around my brain. And Zero says, it's because I care. I thought that was an interesting line, and it kind of like doesn't really go anywhere. But, that set up this entire, sequence of events. And when we finally get to Zero and the rest of the Medusans, they're all floating around free and, unencumbered and, with an innocence that we rarely get to see in any species in Star Trek. And I think one of the more heartbreaking things about Zero that I came to realize, their suit isn't necessarily a suit that they need. It's a suit that reminds all of us that they were captured. Right?
Yeah, it is essentially a symbol of that freedom being taken away.
Exactly. Without the suit, or without having to need the suit, or having been, abducted by slavers in the first place, Zero would have been free to roam around with the rest of their colony, as we saw. But now, because a Medusan's power is, that's devastating to any organic life form, especially their brains, as we've seen. It's more of a representation of, I have now been turned into this weaponized version of myself because my freedom was stolen from me. And that's heartbreaking to think about, right?
Yes. And what do they do about that?
Right. So and you know what? I think that it was really a good idea, a smart idea on the writer's part, to pin all this kind of like on the Kazon. We said before, earlier on in the show, that the Kazon, they could have learned from their mistakes. They could have learned that when they were slaves, that slavery wasn't, it wasn't the answer for them. It certainly wasn't, something that they wanted to endure for the rest of their existence as a species. But they became the exact same thing that they abhorred in every possible way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that stinks.
Yeah.
Whereas Zero is going to do the opposite of that.
Right.
Zero's mission has constantly been to do good and to do no harm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Zero's mission going forward. The Kazon, unfortunately, I don't know if they'll ever learn. I hate to be so bleak about it, but they're not the greatest, especially right now. What would it take for them to change for the better?
It takes one person with vision. And I'm not sure who that is going to be with the Kazon. And on social media, there have been several expert people that have done the analysis on the Kazon. And supposedly, based on their uniforms, these are the Kazon Nistna, the Kazon Remora.
Oh, okay.
Right. So there are a lot of smart people out there. You know who you are. And thank you for doing what you do on social media to point these out.
And there's a bunch of Kazon factions out there. So not every single Kazon sect is necessarily picking up the unwanted and making money off of this trade. But yeah, a lot of possibilities, I suppose.
Yeah, this particular sect is.
Yes.
One of the last things I wanted to get to, it's about revenge. We've seen what revenge does to characters and to, the after effects, of that revenge, like on our heroes. And there's that old Vonnegut proverb. I'm not sure if you've heard this before, but there's a Vonnegut proverb that says, revenge is the dish that is best served cold.
I've heard that somewhere.
Maybe that's a Klingon proverb. Could be a Kazon proverb. Who knows? It's all
the original Klingon, right? Yeah.
So we've seen the entire scope of like why the Vonnegut did what they did, right? We know for some reason the Federation, they arrived in Solum through a wormhole for the first time. And that ended up being something that tore this civilization in half. And then all of a sudden, that ship disappeared. And then another ship that looks similarly like that first ship, which I think the first ship was the Prometheus because it had 4 nacelles and it looked just like the Prometheus, from Ship in a Bottle. So, hey, that's just me.
It seems awfully similar. Yes, there could be something to that.
But what's the cost of it, though? Like, they sacrificed everything. Like, the Vindicator, or I should say Essentia, said that we sent everything. We sacrificed our futures,
right,
instead of taking whatever resources that they had and rebuilding. Like coming together as a people again. It's like, look, it wasn't our fault. We knew that the Federation, they tempted us in one way or another, but now they're gone. And we have a way to be able to come together and heal our planet. But they decided to go completely the opposite way. So what's the cost of all of this? Or
right.
What will be?
Will it be their undoing?
I mean, I don't know. It could have gone so differently, but that's kind of like that whole, what is the price of revenge?
Right.
Again, it's so big. And do you think that the younger audiences understand this?
You know what? They're pretty smart. I'd have to say, yeah. I think so. I think there's enough here to show that the Vonnegut have been so desperate to get their vengeance that they have sacrificed everything. And anytime you go to that kind of extreme, that usually doesn't result in good things. And I think kids have a good instinct on that. But kids, let us know what you're thinking because you can tell us what you're thinking.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear from you.
Any last things that you want to get to, Shar, before we have to jump in towards the end of the episode?
One quick thing
Sure.
that kind of piggybacks off of what we were just talking about with revenge and the Vonnegut is the massive expedition dump that we got from Essentia and whatnot. Like, this episode drops so much knowledge in 20-something minutes, but I didn't feel like it was overwhelmed or forcing us into it. I thought it was kind of satisfying because it does help us move forward with more knowledge, the things that we're going to need to know going forward that you just can't, when everything hits the fan, we're not going to have time to install little, hey, did you know tidbits? That's what this episode was all about. So what did you think about that? Was it too much for you, or do you think the writers did a really good job of walking that tightrope like they always do?
I think that when you take a look at all of the hints and stuff like that have been dropped along the way, these last, before this episode, that would be 15 episodes prior, I think that if you follow kind of like the scorekeeping on every episode, it's not too much of an information dump. We've heard about the Order before. We know that that the diviner chose to make a progeny because he wanted to survive for some reason. And now we know that reason. We know that Dreadnought was there, but now we know that why there was the one Dreadnought and not like an army of other Dreadnoughts. Even on Vonnegut, I think we saw like more of their technology that ties into kind of like the technology that we're seeing like on I guess like on them, like the not in this episode, but in the previous episodes, like the diviners, I guess like his heirloom technology, like Gwen's, like her sword and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So you're seeing all this stuff that has been in episodes before, not necessarily been explained, but now you're kind of like seeing like the ships, like the big ship of his that was on Tars Lamor that the Unwanted, they took off with, right? But that was one out of like 100 ships, right?
Yeah.
So they had 100 of their brightest minds create the Order. They had all these ships. They had all this technology. They had all these resources. They had the Dreadnoughts at their disposal, but they decided to send it all back on like this almost kind of like unwinnable mission, because they don't know what's going to happen. They're just like, we're so bent on revenge that poof, we're just going to go there and take our chances. And it reminded me a lot of 2009 Star Trek. I completely forgot about this point that I wanted to make with Nero. And Spock.
Right. Gonna put everything on the line just to get revenge on Spock for what he thinks Spock did.
And Nero going, and I know this wasn't like a clear, but it was Nero went far further in the past than he was supposed to.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Again, probably, I don't know if that was with a lot of intention or if that's just what happened. I don't remember. It's been a little while since I've watched Star Trek 2009.
Yeah.
Don't hate me. Don't at me. Don't send the letters. But yeah, with the way there's absolutely no way to predict the outcome, that is about as high stakes as you can get. And I guess the decision was made. Well, if it ends up not working, then we at least go out in a blaze of glory doing everything that we could have done.
Right. Exactly. As opposed to, planting and rebuilding and, coming together and healing. So those are the two themes that we're dealing with.
Things you could have done, right?
Those good things, exactly.
There was a wise man who once said, it's a lot easier to destroy than it is to create.
But watch out. We have the Protostar. Now you can do that. And
Right. Well done. Well
Thank
done.
You set me up. So that was perfect. So we've come here at the end of our episode. We have one last final before we have to wrap things up. So yeah. One last final, Shar.
Okay. This episode covers so much ground and the ship doesn't move an inch physically. Right. Isn't that interesting? I found that interesting.
Yeah.
And it's not like this episode lacks action at all, because it does. And yet it feels like that calm before the storm, like we talked about earlier, just because with the karate chop to Janeway, we know that we're just going to dive headfirst into action. That's going to be the climax of the overall story starting next week. Oh my goodness. And I'm so excited. Oh my goodness. I know it's going to be crazy chaos mode. So as far as this episode goes, I was trying to find a word to describe it, and feel good kept coming up, but I don't know if that's the correct word, just because so much of the characters' backstories are sad. That doesn't feel good, but something on building and kind of tying together all the knowledge we've had to make it feel more complete now going forward does feel good. Mm-hmm. So
satisfying.
Yeah, it's sort of maybe even satiated, where you've had that big meal and your belly is full and you just want to sit back and close your eyes because you're so happy and relaxed.
Sounds like Jank and Pog.
It does, doesn't it? How about you? What is your final thought on this one?
I love origin stories. I said that before earlier on, and I love that the majority, if not all of the writing team, were able to craft this episode. When you see that many credits at the very beginning of a show, you're kind of like one of two mindsets, either oh boy or oh boy, right?
Right. This is either going to be really good or a disaster, but with this crew, it is the former.
The last time we saw this many of the writing staff, if not in the entire writing staff on an episode, it was Immortal Star Part 1 and 2. That was obviously impressive as the first half of the season, kind of like the season mid-finale. We just see a lot of stuff here that sets up a lot of stuff. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it all moves forward, but everything so far has been earned, and this episode just kind of builds on top of a lot of those earned moments. And that's where really good storytelling, I think, really should be noticed, and really should be appreciated, when those moments you can think all the way back to and trace all the way back to the first or second episode. And you're like, okay, now that makes sense, right? It makes kind of sense in the episode itself, but now it makes way more sense. But now you're also adding things that maybe later on will be like, oh, now that makes sense. Right?
Yeah, it's that knowledge building where you think you know, but then you learn more, and then you think you know more, but then you learn more. And it just keeps going. It's this cycle. It's like getting down the layers of an onion, right?
Exactly. So I'm really excited to see what comes in these final 4 upcoming episodes.
Oh, man. Yeah, I have no doubt it's going to be a lot to talk about, and it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. But for right now, we've reached the end of our show. Man, it always happens way too fast. I know I say that every episode, but I don't care. It's true.
It's true.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us here on Mission Log Prodigy. If you enjoyed our show, please make sure you like and share and subscribe. Leave us a review. Do all of the things, please. And subscribe to the Mission Log Prodigy playlist on Roddenberry Entertainment if you're watching us. And if you're not watching us, if you're listening to us, make sure that you're subscribed on your podcast catcher. Mission Log Prodigy is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Production and technical direction is by the fantastic Earl Green. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is at missionlogpodcast.com. And if you'd like to support Mission Log directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog.
Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be with us, and we look forward to sharing our thoughts with you on episode 17 next week. And now, as we do with each and every standard episode of Mission Log Prodigy, we would like to leave you all with these very special incoming transmissions.
Receiving listener communications. Message playback begins.
My name is Lorelai. I am 11, and I like this episode. And my favorite part was when Rock Talk told her backstory. And I learned a lot of backstory from this episode.
Yeah, that's what it was, huh? You're liking the show in general?
Yeah, I do like this show a lot.
Who's your favorite character?
My favorite character is Gwen because she's really cool and awesome, and I really like her weapon. It looks like it's made out of liquid gold.
Okay, what's your name and age?
My name is Rook and my age is 7.
Did you like tonight's episode?
Yes.
What was your favorite part of the episode?
My favorite part was when Gwen's father chopped a cap.
Admiral Janeway? You like when he knocked her out?
Yes.
That was surprising, right?
Yes.
And what did you learn from tonight's episode?
I learned that you can tell your backstory so that people can be, people might be surprised about it.
They might learn a little bit about you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.